I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you from the heart of Gaia and her companions, the angel of Findhorn, the landscape angel, and the overarching angel of this gathering, the angel of synthesis. Synthesis. Synthesis, let's say it. Synthesis. I welcome you from the streams where I live, my home, my land, that nourished me when I was in despair for my grandchildren, for the future of humanity. I welcome you from the mountains that I gaze for hope. I welcome you from the land where I come from. I welcome you from the principles of this gathering that insist that we listen to our youth, that we, at long last, listen to our indigenous elders who have waited patiently for us to hear what they have always said. I welcome you from the principle of action and the faith that we have the resilience and the courage to move through this window of opportunity and meet our soul paths here in this gathering that you have chosen. I welcome you with the spirit of collaboration and networking in the principles of climate change and consciousness. I welcome you with the spirit of celebration for the resilience in the creativity and intelligence imparted when our nervous system meets Gaia. I welcome you with the faith that you can hear, fall in love with, mate with, marry into the family of, connect with the natural world around us, the creatures, the subtle beings, all assembling as you have been assembling, so that we can fulfill our sacred responsibility to future generations. This is what I was born for. This is what you were born for. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you.
And we welcome you also, Stephanie. Yeah, it's worth pausing and just giving a moment of acknowledgement and appreciation to you for the amazing channeling of this event, the amazing work you've done over the years to make it happen. So I know many other people are also involved in making it happen, but you've been the driving force, and we want to acknowledge that. So thank you, and welcome to you too.
Thank you, Stephanie. We love you.
So my name is Robin Alfred. I've lived here for about 26 years, helping to build the Eco-Village, the attempt to model a sustainable human settlement. I have the great privilege and honor of being one of the facilitators of the gathering with my beautiful, amazing wife, Kosha. And yeah, you should give her a round of applause. It's hard work being my wife, so she needs a lot of applause, actually. So before we get too far in, to help you stay safe, I need to give you a few safety announcements. One is that there are 3 fire exits. They're the ones that look like fire exit. They say exit, and they've got somebody running as if they're running away from a fire. So they're fairly easy to identify. There's one there, one here, and one here. Please, if there is a fire alarm, we're not intending to test the fire alarms during the week, so take it seriously. Please also don't sit in the gangways here or put kind of things in the way, because these are the fire exits, the gangways here and here. And a couple of words about the auditorium here. We try to keep it as a kind of food and drink free space, so bottled water only in here, or water of some sort. Doesn't have to be water out of a plastic bottle, obviously. And the last thing, the toilets. Yeah, if you drink a lot of water, you might also need to go to the toilet. And those are either outside here or downstairs. So those are your instructions and guidance for keeping you safe, watered, and relaxed.
Thank you, Robin, and let's give an applause. Yeah, and my name is Kasia Joubert. I'm really honored to be here as co-facilitator with my beautiful husband, Robin. And yeah, I'm also here as executive director of the Global Ecovillage Network. And it's a really special time to be here. I think that Stephanie, Graham, the whole team, something has brought us here in the right moment at the right time, and I think we can feel it. That something is shifting in the world at the moment. Climate change is everywhere. It's in the mouth of everyone. And it's really just rising, and just in that moment, we meet here. It's special. And you know, as the Global Ecovillage Network, Jen, we have consultative status with the United Nations. So I've had the glorious and very fascinating opportunity to be present at many of the UN climate conferences in the past years, and being present to witness the disappointment to some of those conversations, but also the incredible joy at Paris when the climate agreements were signed. And then the pressure rising in the past few years as governments are struggling to narrow the gap between what they've agreed to and what is actually happening on the ground. And I've just come back from a journey to Morocco, Sierra Leone, and then the Gambia, and it's just, you know, you can just watch as the trees are being cut down and as the sand is being mined, and at the same time those water sources are drying out and the sea levels are rising, and it's all just happening right now. And we're here in such a safe space with the green around, you know. Findhorn is a safe space, so let's give thanks for the safety of this place in which we're meeting at this very special time where we know that business as usual is no longer possible. It doesn't exist anymore, business as usual. And we know that we need to shift completely. We need to shift the way we are present on the planet. We need to shift from separation to interconnectedness, from profit-seeking to generosity, from fear to love. Yeah, and we all know that. We're here because we're aware, we know it. And I and we pray that this week may be a week where we can find this kindred spirit here in the space, and we can lift each other higher. We're all doing the work already. So how can we lift each other higher to truly transform the work that we're already doing in something that has the power to infiltrate the web of life with healing? And that's what we're here for this week. So we want to welcome all of you, and we will do that in a particular way.
Yeah, I just want to add a note about the way we've constructed the program. Also to say something about the time. Like it's a time, clearly it's a time of climate emergency. It's also a very potent time in terms of spiritual traditions. We're very aware that we journey through the days of Passover during these days, also Easter. There was a lovely Seder, I think, last night for about 40 people who enjoyed that. We go into Easter Sunday tomorrow. As we meet, there are many other things happening around the world. Extinction Rebellion is on the streets in the UK and elsewhere doing a week of actions. We meet at a very potent time, I think. And we also meet at Findhorn. And I just want to say a word about that because Findhorn is a safe place and it's also a fairly magical place. It can be a magical place. It can also be a nightmare. But it can be a magical place. And we want to cultivate the magic a bit, and we want to invite you to pay attention to the magic that's also here. So to notice your synergies, notice your chance meetings, notice that you can maybe communicate more with nature here than you could in other places. Maybe you encounter elemental beings, who knows? Maybe you can tune into the subtle realms more easily here than you can in other places. So there's a potency, and there's a reason why Stephanie kind of channeled, if you like, that Findhorn is the place to hold this conference. So I want to invite you to pay attention to that and to notice that. Often we come to Findhorn thinking we know why we're coming, but actually we come for a different reason that we've discovered as the journey unfolds. So to be present to an unfolding experience. And in order to support that, we've designed what we hope is a fairly kind of spacious schedule. So, of course, there's some structure, for sure, and there are speakers, for sure, and we have some great speakers, not as many as we had originally hoped, for different reasons, some very sad reasons, but we hope that we know we still have some very powerful and potent speakers as kind of provocateurs, if you like, who can seed things into the space, but it's very much a participant-led gathering. We also want to greet the people on the live stream. There's like hundreds of people who are also with us who are not in the hall, so greetings to them also. But we want to create as much as possible a space for you to own. So it's not so much a conference that you receive, it's a conference that you create. So there will be open space, there's world cafes, there's emergent spaces, which are just blocks of time where we don't know what's going to happen, where we want to create what's needed in the moment with you. So there's a strong invitation to participate as the creators of the week. So just a kind of note about the tone that we want to hold through the week. It's not a conference to receive, it's a conference to create. Yeah. And now we want to see who's here.
Yes, because we believe that we might be coming from quite a few different countries. And as Stephanie just started to also welcome us from this connection to her stream and the mountains that she gazes upon. We all come here with the love for the land and the place running in us, and we bring that presence. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to greet the earth through all of us. And sometimes in these gatherings, when we call the people from different countries, we tend to clap or applaud. So we didn't want to do that today. We just, as people stand up, we want to call forth the countries, have the people stand up. And, it's more like an act of love, of feeling that place on the world through that person and sending our care there, maybe waving to each other, welcoming each other in the space.
So we're just going to call it, we think we have a list here of all the countries that are represented here. We probably don't, so there'll be a kind of little space at the end for anybody who's not represented in the 35 countries that are for sure represented here. 35 countries, pretty international gathering. But we're just going to call them out. If you identify with that country, you feel like that's where you're from, please stand and we will wave and greet you, and then we'll go step by step. Australia. Welcome. Let's keep going quite fast.
And Austria.
Belgium. This is one or two.
Brazil.
Canada. Welcome.
And Colombia. Oh.
Czech Republic.
Denmark.
Oh, they all sit together for safety. France.
And Germany. Whoa!
Interesting, so interesting. Greenland. Who is here from Greenland?
Still arriving.
Still arriving. It's a
Still
long way to
arriving.
come. It's a long way to come.
Guam. We found out. We looked it up on the map. Yes! Welcome!
India. Yeah, welcome.
Oh, welcome.
Some people have traveled far.
Ireland.
Oh.
Some music.
Italia.
Malawi. Yes! Welcome!
Welcome. Namibia.
Okay. And it doesn't quite fit here.
But
Well, Namibia hasn't only come far, but it's also their birthday today. It's her birthday.
true.
Mama Visalela. Maybe we could just sing one.
So we sing. Let's sing for you.
Just
Let's sing for you.
A little happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Visalela. Happy birthday to you.
Is it anyone else's birthday?
Netherlands.
Yeah,
Yeah?
your turn.
Really?
I think so.
didn't say Namibia. Netherlands. Netherlands. Ah, beautiful. Thank
Nigeria.
you. Welcome. Norway. Ah, back there. Ah.
Wonderful. New
So
Zealand.
nice.
New Zealand. Whoa, look at this. On the other side of the world.
Oh, yeah. Pakistan. Pakistan.
Still arriving, still arriving.
Greenland.
On the, that's right. On the Greenland Express via Pakistan, it takes a while.
Poland. Welcome.
South Africa.
Scotland. A rare race. Yay!
Senegal.
Sierra Leone. Yes! Yes!
Slovenia. Hey.
Spain. It's such a great opportunity to see friends.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking.
They're all here.
Oh, here. Sweden.
Switzerland.
Little known part of Europe, apparently, called the United Kingdom. Oh.
And the USA.
There's a reason why we do this exercise. You get a little mapping of the territory. We haven't finished, but...
I live in USA, but I want to present my home country, China.
Oh,
China.
China,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you.
Welcome.
And Japan.
And Japan.
And Turkey. Wow.
And Israel.
There is so many more
It's a
countries.
terrible
already.
list.
It's
It's really-
I know. Who made this?
And Zambia. We did have a Zambia.
Portugal.
Zambia is here. Portugal is here. Iran.
Iran. Pupak.
So we're up to 40 countries now. We keep going for long enough. We'll get to 50 probably. Anybody else here?
What? Mexico.
Fantastic.
Huh?
Tunisia.
Tunisia.
Wonderful. Great. Is that enough? Is that everybody? Everyone's represented? Fantastic. What a rich and diverse gathering. I think we should have a round of applause for everybody who's here.
Yeah, and next we're going to meet each other again, but just slightly more intimately. So we want to take a moment just to connect to the people around you and then to hear from each other. So usually we start on the first evening also by a welcoming of the directions, but we've decided to move that to tomorrow, Easter Sunday, but also the day which gives some of our elders a moment to arrive before they welcome the directions. And instead, we're going to take a moment to welcome us into the space and to arrive more fully in this interconnected magic cauldron of a community that we are going to create this week. So I invite you to find someone close to you, and this can be behind you, in front of you, to the right, to the left, someone whom you don't know well yet. So you can turn around, you can turn to the side, maybe you want to stand up here, and there's going to be more instructions.
Half an hour.
Huh?
Is it 9?
It's 9. Huh? What?
It's 9. Ting also.
Huh?
Ting also.
Okay. So before you dive into the conversations, you know, the one thing that we can notice is we're really ready to dive into conversations, okay? So we've noticed that. So we just wanted to give you a few ingredients as well for these conversations, yeah? So we're going to have a few questions, and we also invite you to have the conversations in a particular way. So you don't have to do it, but the invitation is there to do it as a think and listen. You know, one part of what is needed at the moment on this planet is to listen more deeply. And it's not something that as humanity we've practiced very well. So we're going to practice tonight to speak from the heart, speak in a way that surprises ourselves, where we don't share what we've already shared 1,000 times. We don't say the same things we always say, but we allow ourselves to surprise ourselves. And we can only do that when the other person really listens deeply. So one person is going to go into a stance of deep listening, knowing that we have eyes and ears all over our body, not just here. And the other person is going to share. And the first question is simply, where have you come from and how do you feel right now? And we're going to do it in a way where you have around 2 minutes for one person to share, then I'll ring the bell and then the other person will share. So it has a bit of a structure to it, but it also has that free flow. And another, just for our safekeeping, is that we have one sign here, which is when a person lifts, firstly, of course, when the bell rings, we all become quiet, but sometimes we're so in flow that we can't hear the bell. So the second opportunity is that when we raise our hands, we all just become quiet, and we also raise our hands. So it can be like a wave of silence that goes around the room super fast. It's part of our collective skill as a community that we're going to practice. Good, so we're going to start with whoever wears the brighter clothes of the two of you is going to start. And enjoy.
Last night I stayed at the youth hostel in Bristol. I was singing and dancing and music until 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm feeling, I lived here for 11 years, came for a week for a conference, and then stayed for 11 years. But 8 years ago I think, 8 years ago, so but coming back here is deep, deep love. I love all people here in the village. So it's 2 years since I've been back. So I just love the space. And I'm really feeling this thing about the magic of people, the magic of any place. Like 350 people. Have been focused on something magic happens, or magic happens. So I noticed that I'm very focused. I don't want to be just walk out and I'm really very focused inquiry into tipping points. It's like becoming strategically informed.
And this is the moment to just swap roles. So complete your sentence, swap roles. And then guess what? You have the chance to meet another beautiful person who you don't know yet. So have a look around you. Who else is there? And maybe you have to get up and walk a bit. Okay.
Need to run around this microphone?
Let's just see, is there anybody who's still looking for someone here? And here, maybe you two, who else? Yvonne, was there someone here still looking for someone? Over here, Yvonne. There you go. Anyone else? If you're still looking for someone, please be active. There's someone here, someone there, someone here. Jill, well, are you okay? Great, good. Everyone's found someone. And the question this time is, what is your intention? Why are you here? What brought you here? What is your intention for being here? And as you look at each other, whoever feels more intensity in their body first starts. So just notice, yeah? Enjoy.
Oh, we have some time? Yeah, I mean, absolute purpose. At the moment, I'm here to support you and Alex, the whole team.
So I work professionally in the and I've been waiting for decades. We've been watching 5 different and waiting for social So when one of those moments where all kinds of stuff that I'm allowed to do, Nothing else that I said.
Beautiful. And again, take a moment to say thank you.
I'm hungry.
Hope you feel comfortable and confident enough to raise your hand.
Maybe you can just sit comfortably wherever you've ended up. And also, let's take a moment to notice how the atmosphere in the room has changed. That something as simple as connecting to people changes the way we are, changes the field between us. Yeah, we want to take time now to hear from you. What is your intention for being here? Because the intention that each of us has creates our intention as a community. So we have 2 people with microphones. They're going to be walking around. We're asking you to say your intention in a way where we can join you in a way like a prayer, where we join you in praying that this intention may be fulfilled. So we're calling in these intentions into the space. So keep it essential and we'll hear as many voices as we can. Yes, we start over there. And please stand up. We want to see you. Yes.
Play and fun.
Yeah. Let's go here.
Well, I come from Senegal, and in Senegal we're creating eco-village hubs. And in one of the hubs we have also Mauritanian villages who are joining. We need more volunteers, more people with expertise. I'm here to find ways that people can connect with those projects, community projects in Senegal and Mauritania. Thank you.
Thank you.
To co-catalyze a global movement to shift mainstream culture to such an extent that we pull out of our ecological nosedive.
Thank you. Yeah?
Hi, I did come all the way from Guam. It was 27 hours to fly here, so I hope I'm coherent. I'm going to retire early. I'm going to only have 4 weeks with my students for the last time when I get back, and I want to find a way to be practical and active in my next step into my new life.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot of.
Please stand up.
I've heard a lot of mostly negative things about climate change, and everybody that I know is very scared, and they have almost given up. Like my friends that I see online, they post about climate change, and they don't have very much hope. But I'm here to see what people are doing amidst all this like crazy stuff happening, and what sorts of solutions are being worked on.
Thank you.
I'm about to start a new job as climate correspondent at the Reuters news agency. I've been a journalist my whole life. I'm also on a journey through my own consciousness. So when I saw this gathering, I just had to be here. And my intention is to meet as many of you as I possibly can and carry the wonderful work and the wonderful spirit and insights and imagination and creativity assembled in this room and project it as far as I possibly can into the media system through all its arteries and filaments And so I hope that I'll get to speak to as many of you as possible before I leave on Thursday. Thank you.
Yeah?
I'm Jonathan Caddy, and my parents started this community 56 years ago, and my life has been connected with this place, and it's an honor to have you all here. This place has been a place of inspiration and action. It has inspired many different things to happen that are pretty incredible, that are different, and I hope, this will be the start of something here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
It is my intention to get the power of intergenerational collaboration to move from a good idea to a powerful momentum that is required to make it really change global warming and climate change.
Thank you.
I'm here to learn how to be a pure voice for the forests, how to get out of my own way and listen deeply enough that I can purely speak for the forest as a true lover.
And just allow everything you hear also to actually sink in you, so it doesn't kind of go past, but it actually lands in us.
My name is Mugowe from Southern Africa. I'm here to represent the hopes and fears of the communities that I work with. I think a lot of the information that people receive in the mainstream media is just half the story of what is there in the communities where I live and work.
And just for the microphone roamers, don't forget the middle part. I know there was a Chinese voice wanting to come in. There's another voice also to come to the center at some point.
I want to help to create the more beautiful world that our hearts are dreaming of. And I want to do it through songs, through music. And I hope that we can exchange songs. I would like to learn your songs. I would like to share songs. I hope that we can create a song from this community and that we all go out and change the world by creating fields of love and connection and trust through songs.
Thank you.
I come from Sweden. I run a retreat center since 20 years, and I feel like I partly come for the people speaking here, but I much more so come for you guys, because I feel like I want to connect. So I decided to come here alone just so I can mingle as much as possible. And I feel like there's a lot of negativity around climate change that really pushes me, and I think many people, down. So I want to uplift the energy, and kind of also through music, that's my loving element. So I hope we connect this weekend, or this week, and really create something positive.
Yes.
Thanks for allowing me to present my home country, China. I feel it's a very heavy, it's a very big representation of a lot of people in the world.
It's good you're here,
yes.
You know.
and I want to presence. There's a lot of image about China that's very narrow-angled, and I want to presence the indigenous earth aspect of China that's not usually seen in the Western media. And I want to share a word with you from my ancestor heritage. In Chinese, the translation of climate is the qi of nature. So qi is the matrix that connect our own body and the body of nature. And whatever we see from the outside is what happened inside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Charles. Outside this room, there's also, I know, a lot of people who are concerned about climate change. What I saw is that it was difficult for people to know what to do about it, which is why I founded the project No CO2, which is n0co2.org. So this is about planting trees, and the idea is to make it really easy for people to do something about climate change by planting enough trees to offset all the carbon CO2 they're creating in their life, okay? The problem with this is it's very easy and it's nice and to do, but it's very, very difficult to get the traction of people to actually do something. So a number of speakers here have spoken about what to do in order to motivate other people, to get other people involved. I'm really hoping with the synthesis of all these amazing people here this week that together we can actually come up with some ways to persuade other people to get involved, to do something about climate change, whether it's planting trees or doing something else that people will feel that they can get involved and participate and join in. That would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's, Jeske, there's a voice right here in the middle. It's been waiting. And you might just be the last voice also, because Bill McKibben, okay, the second last voice, because Bill McKibben is, I believe, ready. He's waiting for us.
So my intention is to hold the paradox between this planetary anguish that so many of us are feeling and hope. My intention is to keep my own heart open and to resonate with all of your open hearts and all of the opening of hearts that we can do by reaching out to people and rippling out all over the world and bringing the whole planet and the whole system, the whole climatic system back into balance through our consciousness. I think of the Egyptian goddess Ma'at, and I think of it as the divine feminine as one wing and the divine masculine as the other wing.
Thank you. And we have one last short, essential addition.
Thank you. I'm here because I feel there's a lot of fear and pain and guilt surrounding the climate agenda, but I believe that it is love and joy that will get us out of the crisis. And a friend of mine who's worked very closely on the Agenda 2030, those 17 Sustainable Development Goals, told me one day there is an unwritten 18th SDG, which infuses all the others, and it is about love and joy. And I'd like to see how we can make it a reality. Thank you.
So with that, thank you so much for this first harvesting, first bringing out, and I pass over to Robin and to Bill McKibben.
So, what an honor to introduce Bill McKibben to be our keynote speaker for the opening of our session. Bill is coming in clearly through Skype. And what can you say about Bill? I mean, Bill is one of the pioneers of the movement, the climate change movement. He was writing and thinking about climate change decades before anybody else had really thought about it. His book that he wrote in 1989, The End of Nature, has been translated into 24 different languages. It was one of the first books that really spoke to a mass audience about climate change. He is, of course, the co-founder of 350.org, which is a fantastic grassroots campaigning organization around climate change. They have instigated and organized over 20,000 rallies in every country in the world, apart from North Korea, over the years. They also led some of the protests against the Keystone Pipeline. They've also pioneered some of the work against the investment in fossil fuels, the divest movement. And Bill is extremely eloquent. He's a speaker, he's a writer, he's written dozens of books, he's won lots of awards, including the Gandhi Peace Award. He's won the Right Livelihood Award in 2014 for his work with 350.org. He's a distinguished scholar at Middlebury University. He's received honorary degrees from 18 universities. Boston Globe said that he is America's most important environmentalist. And Foreign Policy magazine named him in their inaugural list of 100 most important global thinkers. So it's an enormous pleasure and privilege to welcome him this evening. And one last fact that I discovered when I was researching him, which is not so common, is that in 2014, biologists honored him by naming a new species of woodland gnat in his honor. It's called Megophthalmidia mckibbenii. So you know you've really arrived when that happens. So Bill, huge welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours, but we can't quite hear you just yet.
I'm not quite sure what to do on this end, because it was working fine.
It's good now. It's very good now.
All right, good. Well, I'm very glad to be joining you all. And it's true that it keeps occasionally on my computer, it says your internet connection is unstable, which I'm not sure is a comment on the technology or on me. But I'm very glad to be with you, and I wish I was there in person. I'm not, because we've got a lot of organizing going on in the States right at the moment. You've seen this work around the Green New Deal that's happening here, and I'll elaborate on it in a minute. Look, I've been thinking a lot these last few weeks about the kind of larger picture around climate change, because I've just published a new book called Falter that marks the 30th anniversary of that book I wrote in 1989 that was the first book about climate change. And so I've been kind of plumbing my memory to sort of try and think about what that passage of time has meant. One way I've been thinking about it, oddly, is by looking at the author picture from that book that came out in 1989. I was 28 when I published that book, and so I was a young man with a full head of black hair, and I'm not anymore. I'm an older man now, and there's something bittersweet but entirely normal about that. What's not normal is that our planet over those 30 years has changed at least as dramatically. A picture taken of the Earth from outer space in 2019 looks at least as different as a picture of me taken 30 years ago. The planet has half as much sea ice on the summer Arctic. Its oceans are 30% more acidic. Its hydrological cycle is now utterly out of balance, the way that water moves around the planet. What was 30 years ago a warning about something that was coming, something that we knew was coming because scientists understood what happened when you burned coal and gas and oil, that you put carbon in the atmosphere, and they understood that the molecular structure of CO2 trapped heat. But we didn't know exactly how hard and how fast this was going to pinch. And the history of the last 30 years is it pinched considerably harder and faster than anyone could have predicted. The pace of change is such that what was a warning 30 years ago is now the brute fact of daily life for hundreds of millions of our brothers and sisters on every corner of the planet. Sometimes we see that very up close because it happens dramatically in places where there are a lot of cameras. Probably many of you watched last autumn the pictures from California, where in a record firestorm, a city literally called Paradise, literally turned into hell inside of half an hour. And once you've seen those pictures of people burning in cars as they tried desperately to escape down crowded roads, once you've seen them, there's no way to unsee them. But of course, most of the things that happen in places where there aren't so many cameras. The iron law of climate change is the less you did to cause it, the more that you will suffer. And so every day around the world, there are people suffering extraordinary damage as a result of what we've done to the atmosphere. Right now, our hearts and minds should be with our brothers and sisters in Mozambique and Malawi and Zimbabwe. Cyclone Idle, which hit about 4 weeks ago, has been described as the worst disaster in the history of the Southern Hemisphere. The flooding was almost unbelievable, and what was entirely predictable was the wave of deaths from diseases like cholera now following in its wake. You've watched as deep droughts across the Middle East helped destabilize countries like Syria, and then you've watched as 1 million migrants streaming for their lives out of Syria discombobulated the politics of Western Europe. You should know that the UN prediction, the low end of the UN prediction for climate refugees this century is on the order of 200 million, and the high end is on the order of 1 billion. So try to imagine what kind of discombobulation we can expect. So far, human beings have raised the temperature of the planet about 1 degree Celsius, and that's been enough to trigger the changes that I've described. But we're still fairly early in this saga, unfortunately. Even if all the nations in the world kept the promises that they made at the Paris Climate Accords in 2015, the temperature would still go up something like 3.5 degrees Celsius. And that's enough that we probably couldn't have civilizations anything like the ones that we're used to. So I guess the first thing that I've learned over those 30 years is that scientists are conservative, and we should expect that this extraordinary damage will continue and grow, and not grow linearly, but grow exponentially as time goes on, unless we're able to intervene very rapidly and very, very dramatically to transition away from coal and gas and oil. The second thing I think I learned that's probably important here, and it may strike some of you as sad to hear me say it, but I fear it's the sad truth. I spent the first half really of that 30 years operating under a delusion, and the delusion was that we were engaged in an argument about climate change. I'm a writer and a teacher, and so my instinct, confronted with a problem, is to write more books, have more symposiums and gatherings like this one, all of it based on the assumption that once there's enough data and understanding on the table, the powers that be will do the things that need to be done. It took me too long to figure out that that was a dramatic misunderstanding of the situation. Sometime 15 years ago or so, it began to dawn on me that we'd won the argument. By really 1995 or so, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change put out its first big report, it was very clear to the world scientists precisely what was going on. We'd won the argument, but we were losing the fight, because the fight was not about data and reason. The fight was what fights are usually about: money and power. And the other side in this fight was the world's fossil fuel industry, the richest industry in the world, the richest industry in the history of the world. And it was very clear that it was using that wealth and power to maintain its business model a few more decades, even at the cost of breaking the planet. Now, we didn't know really the whole backstory until the last 5 years or so, when great investigative reporting at places like the Pulitzer-winning website Inside Climate News, the Los Angeles Times, the Columbia Journalism School, have revealed through interviews with whistleblowers and deep dives into the archives, have revealed precisely what was going on back in the 1980s. What was going on was that the fossil fuel industry understood before anyone precisely what was going to happen with climate change. It makes sense. I mean, take Exxon, then the biggest and richest company in the world with obviously a great staff of scientists, and their product was carbon. So of course they were going to figure this question out. And they did. By 1982 or 1983, they were informing the executives of the company how fast and how much it was going to warm. And they were believed. Exxon, for instance, began building all its drilling rigs to compensate for the rise in sea level that it knew was coming. They started planning where in the Arctic they'd be drilling once it melted. What they didn't do was tell any of the rest of us. Instead, they invested billions of dollars in building this architecture of deceit and denial and disinformation that kept us locked for 30 years in a completely phony debate about whether or not global warming was real. Debate that both sides knew the answer to at the beginning. It's just that one of them was willing to lie. And that lie turns out to be the most consequential lie in human history because it's cost us the 3 decades that were our best chance to avert and ameliorate this crisis. You can tell how successful that lie was by the fact that the man who now resides in the White House operates under the belief that climate change was a hoax manufactured by the Chinese, as he put it. A belief so odd that if you were sitting on a public bus and heard someone muttering it, you would get up and change seats. And yet that's the vision that dominates the most important government on the planet. So that led to the third thing I think that I've learned over those 30 years, which is that a movement is a very good thing to have. Movement is the thing you try to build to counterbalance that remarkable wealth and power that was dominating on this issue. We started building 350.org a decade ago. It takes its name from what the scientists tell us is the most carbon you could safely have in the atmosphere. We chose it in part because that's an important number, 350 parts per million, a number obviously we're already well past. But we also chose it because we knew we wanted to organize globally. They don't call it global warming for nothing. And we figured that Arabic numerals would cross more easily the linguistic boundaries that make communication difficult on our planet. When I say we, in this case, I mean, we started out in kind of ludicrous ambition, considering who we were. The we was myself and 7 college students here at Middlebury College in rural Vermont, where I live and teach. There were 7 students, there were 7 continents, each one took one. The guy who took the Antarctic also had to take the internet. And we set out to find people like ourselves all over the world. Now, through some combination of beginner's luck and the fact that there was an unfilled ecological niche, there really was no climate movement a decade ago, we had a fair amount of success. It turned out that there were people all over the world who were worried. They weren't all what we would call environmentalists, but they're all over the world. There are people who care about women's rights, about development, about war and peace, about hunger, about public health, about the things you cannot have on a destabilizing planet. And they were our natural allies. The first thing we did was ask people to have a global day of action. Everybody demonstrate where they were to try and draw attention to this fix that we were in, to kind of try and educate their countrymen. And it was successful. There were 5,200 simultaneous demonstrations in 181 countries. CNN called it the most widespread day of political action in the planet's history. And we went on to organize, as Robin said, about 20,000 demonstrations around the world. that was very useful education, I think. And if we had 50 years to solve this problem, it's probably just what we'd keep doing. But of course, we don't have 50 years. We're out of time. And so we quickly decided we needed to up the ante from education to confrontation. We launched the kind of visible national and international phase of this battle against the Keystone Pipeline in the United States in 2011. Nobody thought we had a chance to win because big oil had never lost one of these fights, but then more people went to jail than had gone to jail about anything in this country in a very long time, about 1,200 people. And before long, this had become a central fight in the U.S. For 10 years, we've managed to keep that particular pipeline at bay. More to the point, by demonstrating that big oil wasn't bulletproof, people have risen up to fight every frack well, every coal mine, every pipeline, every oil port that people propose. We do not win all of these battles, though we do win a lot of them. Even when we don't, we make life very difficult for the fossil fuel industry. We slow them down. And slowing them down is important because our sisters and brothers who are engineers are doing their jobs spectacularly well. They're bringing down the cost of a solar panel and a wind turbine with extraordinary speed. A solar panel costs 90% less than it does a decade ago. It's now the cheapest way to generate power around the world, which means that every week that we can hold up some new pipeline, the odds that it will never get built go up and up and up. At the same time, we've been trying hard to attack the financial underpinnings of this industry. My dear friend and colleague Naomi Klein and I launched this divestment campaign, came up with the idea for it in 2012. And when we started it, we had no idea how well it would go. We were thinking of the divestment campaign that we'd participated in college against apartheid in South Africa. This has grown to be much bigger than that. In fact, bigger than any anti-corporate campaign probably in history. We're at now about $8 trillion worth of endowments and portfolios that have divested in part or in whole. Last summer, notably, your not distant neighbors in the country of Ireland became the first nation on earth to divest all public holdings in the fossil fuel industry, which was a great moment. That kind of pressure works. Shell Oil earlier this year described divestment as a material risk to its business. A couple of weeks ago in Texas, the heads of the coal industry explained to a reporter at some length that they could no longer find investors, investment funds, in order to capitalize new mines or new projects. Just too many people had pledged not to do it. So we continue this kind of work as best we can, and we need everybody's help in doing it. And I hope that y'all will join in. I will say that the fourth thing I've learned in this process, and I'll be entirely honest with you, is that we don't actually know if we're going to win this fight or not. And that's because this is the first timed test that human beings have really come up against. Normally, we're used to battles for progress that take a long time and that you win slowly and make some progress on and come back for more progress later and so forth. Dr. Martin Luther King, my great hero, always said at the end of the speeches when he would give them, he would say, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." Translated, I think he meant, this may take a while, but we're going to win. And that was a comforting thought, and people needed comforting thought because you had to be very brave. You had to be, and you have to be still to this day, very brave to be a civil rights activist. The arc of the physical universe seems to be short and to bend toward heat. And if we don't win soon, then we will not win. And the Earth will undergo a spasm of the kind it's undergone only 4 or 5 times in its geological history. That's what we're on the edge of. And we don't know if we're going to be able to mount a sufficient defense in time or not. We don't know if we'll be able to break the power of the fossil fuel industry. There are very good signs, however, at the moment of dramatic upsurge in citizen action. You're seeing some of them in the United Kingdom over the last week. Our friends and colleagues at Extinction Rebellion have done a terrific job of making Londoners realize that this is a crisis. They've been shutting down the city, which seems entirely appropriate. The inconvenience that it causes people is nothing compared to the inconvenience that they will suffer if we let climate change get further out of control, nor does it begin to compare with the inconvenience that all of us have caused poor people around the world who did nothing to create the situation in which they find themselves the victims. You've watched the rise in the United States and now in other parts of the world of this call for a Green New Deal, which is beautiful to see. In the United States, this effort has been run by a group called the Sunrise Movement, most of whom are veterans of this fossil fuel divestment campaign on college campuses, which is a good reminder of how movements build and feed upon themselves to get bigger and stronger. It's a beautiful drive because it's the first time we've had a piece of legislation that's on the same scale as the problem that it's trying to solve. And so that's beautiful to see. Maybe most beautiful of all has been in the past year, the number of very young people indeed who are following Greta Thunberg of Sweden in these epic school strikes that now happen every Friday at elementary schools and middle schools and high schools all over the planet. They're beautiful, beautiful things to watch. And what they're calling now routinely over and over again is for adults to hear them and to back them up. And so I hope that we will figure out ways to do that. If you stay tuned to places like 350.org, you'll see that before long the call will be out for adult strikes of the same kind beginning in the autumn that aim at disrupting business as usual, just as kids have done a good job of disrupting education as usual. We need to disrupt business as usual because it is literally business as usual that is doing us in. It's just all of us getting up every day and doing the same things we did the day before and continuing down the same path. I think what I would say on this question of consciousness, which I think lies at the heart of all of this, is that what all these activists are working towards is less particular pieces of legislation and more a shift in the zeitgeist, a shift in our sense of what's normal and natural and obvious. And if we can win that shift in the zeitgeist, then we can win all the pieces of legislation and things that we need. That will be the moment when we will have broken the power of the oil and gas and coal companies. So that's the thing we fight for, and we have to fight for it by coming together. 30 years ago, environmentalists specialized in telling people to change their habits, put in new light bulbs, install solar panels and things. Those are all good ideas. My house is covered with solar panels. I'm speaking to change work at this point. One rooftop at a time, one vegan meal at a time, one electric car at a time. Changing one's own individual habits isn't a recipe at this point for solving climate change. If we had more decades than it would be, but we don't. We're negotiating with physics here, and physics is a poor negotiator. So I think that the bottom line is the most important thing an individual can do in this cause is to become something less of an individual and join together in those movements that have been set up and are working to make them larger and more powerful, in order that we alter the basic underlying political and economic structures that are driving, at this point, our destruction. So that's our job, to figure out how to build enough power that we can change the world. And that's a job we cannot do one by one. We can only do together. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're taking up this question of consciousness, because I think rightly understood, it really is key. Now, I'm going to end by telling you that there, as I said before, is no guarantee that we're going to win this fight. It's possible that we have waited too long to get started. The momentum of physical change on this planet is now very great and very daunting. That said, we are, I think, going to put up a real fight. And 10 years ago, we couldn't have said that. We didn't know if there was going to be a fight. It looked like there might not really be. And that fight, which may be successful, even if it isn't successful, is the kind of key testament to human dignity in this moment on Earth. It's a burden, in a sense, to be alive and with the knowledge of what's going on right at this moment. But it's also an extraordinary privilege. Very few, well, in any moment in time, a tiny percentage of human beings are able to say to themselves, I'm doing the most important thing I could be doing right now. And those of you who've already joined in this climate fight are really able to say that. There is nothing more important that you could be doing. And I just want to say thank you, and that I look forward very much to getting to work side by side with you going forward. Thank you all.
So, Bill, I think you can hear the strength and the persistence of the applause is a great testimony to your work over decades, and I think we all thank you hugely for that. Bill's actually in a very intense process at the moment of being on a speaker tour and launching his new book, Falter, so he has another 15 minutes to answer some questions. So if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll move the mics around. Please ask your question very succinctly so that we can have as many voices as possible and Bill actually has time to respond. So there's one over here. We're starting over here.
Thank you. Bill, what do you see as the role of forest conservation and reforestation in the critical role they have for the solution?
Thank you. That's a good question. So let me just talk briefly about the way to look at this problem is, we have to figure out not only how to stop pouring more carbon into the atmosphere, but how to take some out. And forests help us in both ways. Deforestation is obviously a big contributor to climate change, not as big as burning coal and gas and oil, but probably second on the list. So whatever we can do to slow down deforestation helps enormously. It's one of the reasons that this year has been depressing. The election of Mr. Bolsonaro to head Brazil and his promise to start cutting down the Amazon is an ominous sign, and we need to do what we can to try and prevent that. We also need to be thinking hard about the ways that we have to soak up some of the excess carbon in the atmosphere. How, as it were, to kind of enlarge the drain on the bottom of the bathtub even as we stop pouring more carbon in. And forestation is one way to do that. Planting trees is useful. It's not useful enough to soak up all the carbon that we're pouring in and that we've poured in the past, but it definitely helps. And it leads us to think about other ways too along the same lines. There's been a lot of good work done in the last year or two on the question of soils, and looking at the ways in which, if agriculture shifts, we could sequester a good deal of carbon in soils. Maybe taken together, all these things could add up to as much as 30 or 40 parts per million CO2 sequestered out of the atmosphere, which would be a large help. The problem, of course, with both agriculture and forestry is that, and a reason we target the fossil fuel industry is they're extraordinarily powerful, the fossil fuel industry, but there's only 100 significant players. And so at least the set of people you have to change or beat or whatever is manageable. Forests and farms, there are billions of foresters and farmers on planet Earth, and changing cultural practices takes a while. And so it's very good work to be engaged in, but do not count on it. Job 1, Job 2, and Job 3 remain this energy transition, but there's a lot of other work to be done after that, and I'm very grateful to you. I sense you're probably engaged in that forestry work, and I'm grateful, very grateful to you for that.
Thanks. Bill,
thank you so much. My work is mainly around nuclear weapons abolition. And I would like to ask you to speak to that in the sense of that the military-industrial complex is one of the biggest climate criminals as an organization and industry. But also there is the inextricable link between nuclear weapons and nuclear power, and the sad fact that some environmentalists are promoting nuclear power and not, to my mind, seeing the links between nuclear war and nuclear power, and of course the extraordinary problem of nuclear waste. Could you speak to that, please?
Sure. Look, I don't spend a great deal of time on this question because I don't think that we're going to be building a lot of nuclear power plants going forward. Some people think we will, but I think we won't, because if for no other reason, the cost of them is extraordinary. The price of a solar panel has plummeted, but the price of a nuclear reactor keeps going up and up and up and up. I should say that I think it puts in at least a little perspective the unique dangers that we face from climate change. A nuclear reactor contains the potential for a great deal of harm if something goes wrong. And things do go wrong, as we've seen most recently in Japan. A gas-fired power plant or a coal-fired power plant destroys the world if you operate it exactly according to spec. And that's why we concentrate our work there. I think that there have been 3 distinct threats to human existence that we've discovered over the last 100 years. The first was, as you point out, all-out nuclear war. One remembers immediately Oppenheimer looking at the first explosion at Alamogordo and quoting from the Gita, saying we are become as gods, destroyers of worlds. So far, thanks to efforts like yours, we've managed to not put that genie back in the bottle, but at least head off for the moment any further use after the use at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The second threat was the depletion of the ozone layer, which happily and almost by accident we discovered just in time. And we're able, after 10 years hard work, to force the chemical companies to stop producing the chemicals that caused the problem. The third is climate change. We've done nothing about it, essentially, as a world. And I think the reason is that it's been hard for us to picture the damage. Everybody can get a picture in their minds of what a mushroom cloud over a city looks like. The human imagination seems to compass it fairly easily. We've had a much harder time understanding that the explosion of 1 billion cylinders and 1 billion pistons every minute of every hour of every day can wreak damage on the same scale. But it can, and in this case has, without anything to ameliorate it. That's what's melted the Arctic, changed the chemistry of the ocean, and so on and so forth. So that's why I think there's this extraordinary level of attention beginning to focus on it. And I'm afraid that for the moment, that's where the attention most of all has to focus, because, as I say, it is a time test that we have a very short time in order to try and slow down if we still can.
Thank you. I think maybe we have time for 2 more questions. So one here and then the last one over here.
Hi, Bill. I wonder regarding racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, these forms of oppression, how do you see the work that's being done on them factor into the climate activism that you do?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think the good news is that the climate movement is run mostly by frontline communities and indigenous communities. I'll tell you the story of that first day of action that we did in 2009, where we organized those 5,200 demonstrations. We asked people to send pictures in from their demonstrations as they held them. I'd always heard that environmentalism was something that rich white people did, and if you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, you wouldn't be an environmentalist, and on and on and on. And it took about 20 minutes of watching those pictures come in to recognize that that was nonsense, that most of the people we were working with around the world were poor, black, brown, Asian, young, because that's what almost everybody in the world is. And what do you know, exactly as concerned about climate change as anybody else, maybe more so because it bears down so hard on you in those places. That's who's been in leadership. And let me single out in particular indigenous communities around the world, who I think are really become in many ways the most important players. There's 2 reasons for that. One is a kind of very practical one. In many places in the world, we exiled indigenous peoples off to what we thought were wastelands on the edge of our civilizations, only to find out in the 21st century that those wastelands are often atop big piles of coal or gas or oil. Either that or they're athwart the pipeline routes that you need to get them to market. And so that's why people, indigenous nations have played such a great role in many of these fights, the fights in Australia over big giant coal mines, the fights in North America over things like the Dakota Access Pipeline or the Trans Mountain Pipeline now in Canada. But the other thing that's going on that I think is of extraordinary interest is just watching the convergence of the oldest wisdom traditions on the planet and the newest wisdom traditions on the planet. That is to say, the vision from the Sweat Lodge matches up pretty darn well with the vision from the supercomputer and the satellite at this point. And what those visions are both telling us, what those prophecies are both telling us, is that all the rest of us have got it wrong, and that the vision that's kind of animated Western society for the last couple of 100 years, this vision of endless growth and things, just isn't going to work anymore. So I think that that's a powerful moment, and it's one of the reasons why lining up behind indigenous communities in their work is one of the really important things to do right now.
Good. I think the last question over here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your beautiful presentation. I suppose what I feel in my heart is I'm reacting to the word fighting and fight, and I'm 47 and I've been involved in many fights. And the biggest thing that I ever saw change was in Ireland when, through a campaign of love, we were the first country to vote for gay marriage in the world through public vote in a Catholic conservative country. And I've realised that I've spent so much energy fighting. I don't want to fight, but I want to create a vision in the world, and what you're presenting is a vision. And I suppose I'm questioning the word fight. Is it carefully considered, or is it a word maybe that we're using a little bit dangerously?
It's a good question, and it's one that I figured might come up there. And I'm glad it does. I use it considerately. It's very much seemed like a fight. When you watch the oil companies sick German shepherds on nonviolent native protesters trying to keep a pipeline from going across their land in the Dakotas, when you watch the oil companies hire veterans of the tobacco industry to systematically lie over the course of 30 years about the effect of their product, then I think that it's accurate to understand that you're in a fight. I think that the way you respond in that fight, and the way that we've always responded, is through precisely the kind of nonviolent action that is one of the greatest gifts of the 20th century. The understanding that emerged, I would argue that we're going to look back in 300 years, if we're around to look back, and think that the 20th century's two great inventions probably turned out to be the solar panel and nonviolent movement building. The work that the suffragettes and that Gandhi and that Dr. King and others did to help develop this innovative idea that through a kind of unearned suffering, people would begin to be able to build resistance to the powerful, is extraordinarily important. We don't know exactly how it works. We don't have the equivalent of a kind of West Point or Sandhurst for nonviolence, though we should. But we're beginning to understand, we sort of make it up as we go along, but we're beginning to understand just how effective it can be to, when you're in a fight, turn the other cheek in a thoughtful way. So I'm willing that everybody call it what they want to call it and think about it in the terms they want to think about it, as long as people are engaged in what is by any means an actual struggle with actual people on the other side. We're not trying to kill them. We're not trying to, but we are trying to remove their power to continue wrecking the one earth that we all share. And so that's a good place to end, and just to say enormous thanks for the work that you did, especially around issues like gay marriage, and demonstrate that it is definitely possible to shift the zeitgeist of cultures and civilizations. This one's harder because nobody make $1 trillion a year being a bigot, and people do make $1 trillion a year selling each other hydrocarbons, but the principle's the same. And so many of the tactics will be the same. And I have no doubt that you all will figure out how to do it in the course of these next few days. The only thing I'd tell you is to remember always that this is a question with a time limit. And if you come up with answers that solve climate change but take 50 years to do it, they aren't actually answers. Winning slowly against climate change is a different way of losing. And so we need to focus our attention constantly on the question of what are the most effective things we can be doing at this moment? Where are the most vulnerable points, the pressure points that we can figure out how to exploit? With that, let me just you've got many wiser people than me and many more important things to think about and talk about. But I'm very grateful that you let me join you by low carbon Skype just to be a small part of this majestic conversation that you're embarked on, and to wish you all good luck in the days ahead. And good Pesach and happy Easter, and on we go forward. Many, many thanks.
You're gone. Well, I was going to thank him, but he's gone. But yeah, what an amazing talk and a great challenge for us. I think he's set us a good agenda for the next 3 or 4 days to solve these challenges. And as he said, if we come up with things that take 50 years to work, then we're still losing. So many profound insights from Bill, and maybe we just take a moment to acknowledge it. Yeah, take a moment to acknowledge it. Maybe just notice how it lands in you also. Where does it land in your mind, in your heart, in your body? Where does it land? Those messages from Bill.
Yeah, and let's just stay with that for a moment. Allowing the consciousness aspect of this conference to land. You know, as Bill spoke and others speak, and we open our hearts to the reality. We open our minds, we open our bodies, we open our spirits. Let's just take a moment to notice how we are here right now. What does it actually feel like to be a human being at this point in time? Whereas Bill said, it's okay for me to age and look so different 30 years later. But the problem is that the planet is following a same trajectory. That was never meant to be. It's not the course of nature, it's the course of humanity. And who are we as individuals moving into communities, moving into movements? How can we stop the tide? How can we turn the tide? And just notice how your body feels with these questions. Are you able to sit deeply in yourself? There's a part of you just wanting to jump up and do something now. Are you able to feel the pain of what is happening and stay? Can you feel your feet on the ground? And what is in your heart right now? What are the emotions that are alive? What is the emotional tone? Do you feel fear, anger, despair, sadness, joy at the challenge, love? And let's also take a moment to connect to our minds and just notice how busy are we in our minds? Is there a possibility to become receptive? For new insights, new connections. And let's also take a moment to go beyond the mind, beyond the body, to invite all those powers that lie beyond us. Stephanie invited the angel of Findhorn, the overlighting angel of Findhorn, to be here. But maybe in whatever way you connect, to higher guidance, to light, to your soul. May insight and wisdom seek us out this week, and may we be present as full human beings. Thank you. And we are going to sing together. So over to Barbara and the song.
Can we have the lights a little bit lower? Because I would like to invite us to create a sanctuary in which we can pray together, in which we can open our hearts together and go even deeper through the power of sound and through the power of our shared longing for that more beautiful earth that our hearts know is possible. So, as we're setting up here, just close your eyes for a moment. And in your mind's eye, just go to a beautiful place on our planet that you love dearly. And just feel how that beauty nourishes you. And let's bring those beautiful places into our room by imagining a small rendition of the planet above our candle. Knowing, like in homeopathy, what we do to a very small part has an influence on the greater whole. So with the help of my friends, my musician friends here, Sarah and Tom, thank you so much for joining us again, and also the help of the whole community that is living here, we're going to turn to the Hawaiian culture to give us a prayer, a song, some movements with which to conclude this evening and to create a field that is more powerful than anything any of us can do by ourselves. And we're going to call on the source of everything, under whichever name and form we know it, God, the One, all that is, to help us in our endeavors this week. If we can make it even a bit more, I don't know how that works with the live stream, but just give it a bit more atmosphere. And if I could have some community members who know Ema Lama, would you come down here and just help us with singing and being a force that helps to transform the whole more quickly, because we know that a little bit of yeast transforms the whole cake. So thank you, yeast people. So can you see the words? So let's just for a moment look at it. We're gonna, with the Hawaiian culture, we're gonna say E malama I ka heiau. Let's just say that once. And once more. And the third time we put pono in there. E malama pono I ka heiau e. So what malama means, it means to take care, to look after. And once we have the singing going, and I'm inviting us to put some gestures, prayerful gestures to it. And the gesture for malama is like this. It means to take care. And heiau is the sacred earth, the temple ground. We're going to bless the earth with our hands like that. Let's just say it together. So we're going to go, E malama I ka heiau. E malama I ka heiau. And for the third one, we're going to caress something very precious, like a child's head or the globe of our planet Earth itself, like this. E malama pono I ka heiau. And then we're going to say, E. We're going to say yes. So what pono means in a good and a balanced way. So the first part means we will take care of the sacred earth in a good and a balanced way. And then we follow it with earth and sky, sea and stone, hold this land in sacredness. So for that, we're going to pick up the energy from the earth related to the sky. We're going to have waves from one side to the other. The stone, we're going to do like that. And when it comes to hold this land in sacredness, we're just going to reach out and hold the hands of our neighbors. Just create that thing together. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, I would like to invite us to stand up. We've been sitting a long time, and we're operating under the premises which I got from an African saying that says, if you can walk, you can dance. If you can talk, you can sing. And I always like to add, and there are no mistakes, only variations. So that should help us all. So if you give us a C chord. Okay, so what we're going to do, those of us in the room who know it will sing it already, and those of us who don't know it yet, come in the next time. And once we have the song established, and feel free to bring in harmonies, whatever, we'll bring in the movements, and you'll help us with that. And what we might do at the very end, I might go like this, and we might separate us into two parts, because the two parts also work as a round. So we can put the prayer together, we'll bring in all these different harmonies. And again, before we start, let's just imagine our planet Earth in the middle of our room. And let's imagine that our highest dreams have already happened. And what would this planet look like if it was like our hearts are dreaming? And let's sing to her and share with her and with all her invisible beings our love, our care, our intention to preserve the beauty of this earth. Let's try all together. Let's do it again with harmonies. Once more. No. then we have a way of applauding if we don't want to disrupt the energy, which is like that. So thank you for your beautiful voices. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, musicians. Thank you, everybody who contributed to this evening.
Thank you, Baba.
And if you want to feel particularly blessed, especially during the night, give a hug to a few people before you go. And
Thank you.
Huh? So, thank you for being here tonight. The coach to Cluny leaves in just around 11 minutes from the runway. So those people who want to go back to Cluny now, please find your way. There will also be lifts back to Cluny at 23:30, 11:30. There is now more music, open mic at the cafe, and we meet here again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. Have a wonderful night, sleep well, see you tomorrow.
It's really lonely me. Good.
At least you had to stand up.
Yeah.